So, welcome to The Bards Among Us, the importance of music and role-playing games, sponsored by Reframe. Reframe's a paneling group that when you see sponsored by Reframe, you're most likely going to see me and some of these other people up here. Apparently, we're identifiable because, so who's heard of Be More Chill, the Broadway show? Okay, yeah. Hey. So I was at like the closing of Be More Chill, like in New York on Broadway, and I posted on the Reframe page, like, we're here. Someone found us, like, while we were stage dooring. And they were like, oh my God, you're Reframe. I was like, first of all, you know we're not fancy. Second of all, thanks. But you're also in my way for getting an autograph. I got because I had the book, because it was a book before the show, and they were like, wow, someone actually brought the book, and I threw it up there. And they signed it. I was so happy.
That's awesome.
Okay, so how this panel works is, oh wait, let me introduce everyone. So, hey, I'm Lodestar. That's Chris. Spudnik is down yonder. And this is Sanjuku. Did I say it right?
Yes. Why'd you leave me for last?
Because I was going in order of the slides. To make sure I got
Fine.
names right.
Fine.
Okay, so what's going to happen is everyone up here is here because we have special different ways of looking at music and understanding games. And yeah, so I'm just going to ask questions. And if anyone has any questions themselves, little pop bits or info, this is a very interactive life. So welcome, and here we go. So, to my panelists, do you think music enhances the story? We have to start at the basics.
Absolutely.
Imagine if we just said no, like no, out of here.
Goodbye, farewell. Have a good life, everybody.
Right.
No, I mean, absolutely. Music is just, I mean, how boring would The Lord of the Rings be if it didn't have any music whatsoever? Like, music can just absolutely define your emotions in an experience. It can define just all your highs and lows. What do you think?
I think oftentimes music can be an essential component of the story. If you ever take the music out of like a clip that usually has music, it suddenly becomes like really creepy to watch because like all of the emotion is suddenly drained from it.
Yeah, it's entirely like uncinematic. You could do this too if you look on. I'm sure there's like a bunch of YouTube things that have like very famous clips that are like lacking the music. Like imagine Jaws without the Jaws theme. It would. I mean, it's the same actors, the same writing, everything. It would suck. You know, it'd be really bad.
I think I actually did see a clip. It was some big action movie. I think it was like John Wick, and someone just went through and stripped out all of the sound except for the actual combat. And it was hilarious. There's just a bunch
just
of
like the
people
efforts.
grunting.
That's what they're called, like the grunting.
Yeah, I think the channel's called like, what's the channel? Oh my God, no, it's a real thing. It's, oh my God, no, but it's, realistic scenes. Where they take out all the music and they just shove in all the random like squeaks of shoes and stuff. But they keep the singing.
Oh.
Because the singing is something you would hear in the world. So it's very fun to watch a musical part.
So yeah, music, absolutely.
Yeah, pretty basic, yeah.
And music, and I'm probably going to be talking about tabletop most of the time, Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons. Add a bit of music into a session, and wow, it's great. Unless you get that annoying loop where, you know, every 3 seconds there's a little loop.
Yeah. So if you look
Questionable.
up swamp sounds and noise and background music, there's like a bog like, and it's so gross. That's the sound we're talking about.
It was great. Great session.
You know,
Everyone just shivered.
You know, even as an educator, when I'm trying to do like kind of a role play type deal with the history students that I'm trying to teach, I'll sometimes add in theme music to whatever activity or lesson that we're doing just to make it that much more real. Or sound effects like you did. Like for World War II, sometimes I'll put on like battlefield sounds. Other times for like, you know, the Cold War, I'll put on like apocalyptic music because it is a time period when the world almost ended. So music, and I've been using it just to make education more thematic.
Yeah, it connects things. Like your brain starts firing more because it's like associating the music with what you're hearing, so you're experiencing it more fully rather than just hearing people drone on. We really should have had music, guys. I didn't make the slideshow, so I don't know if there's any in it, but come on.
I don't really know that it
how
would
did
have
we have a
worked
music
given
panel?
our current track record, but it's a good thought.
That's a good point.
Also remember, this goes on YouTube. I don't want to be taken down for copyright.
through.
That's right. Nobody sing anything.
So, awesome. When playing a game, how do you feel about lyrics in the musics?
Oh man, I go back and forth on this a lot. Like if you're playing like Kingdom Hearts, like those songs are so classic. They're great. But like I remember the first time playing Final Fantasy X-2. And I thought it was so weird when Yuna was doing her little like pop star routine. So I don't know. I go back and forth on it. I'm ambivalent. It's tough.
I go back and forth too, because sometimes you have like these really big cinematic moments, and if you have lyrics, you're thinking more about, what are they saying? What? Is that actually a language I know or not? And you look it up later, and of course it is.
Oh, that's actually a good point. I think it's better when you don't know the words, because you can kind of just turn that part of your brain off.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you have vocalization instead, just, not necessarily singing words, that can really help define an emotion as well.
Oh yeah, notably like One Winged Angel, Final Fantasy VII Sephiroth's theme, has vocalization obviously, but it's nonsense words. It doesn't actually mean anything.
Well, mostly.
Yeah, it's mostly nonsense words.
Um.
What about you, Chris?
One thought I had is that sometimes, they'll completely make up a language, or it'll be nonsense words just to make it seem a lot more exotic, which, if I have no idea what they're singing about, it definitely feels a little strange.
Final Fantasy 14, Lahi, anybody?
What's that? Yeah, I was there.
Oh, yeah. Famously, Sigaros, a lot of their, what they sing is just essentially like Icelandic scatting. So.
Very true, very true.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. But then at the same time, there is something to be said for actually using lyrics. I've been really deep down the Final Fantasy 14 rabbit hole lately, and there's nothing quite like being in the middle of a boss fight and suddenly just they drop this sick guitar riff and start like heavy metal growling. It can really just make it awesome. You just kind of have to be careful and pick your time, I guess.
Yeah, I think it depends on how serious the game is as well. Like Blaze Blue or any of those fighting games, they have amazing soundtracks, and a lot of the songs do have vocals, but it works because it's a fighting game. Nobody really cares about the story. So, look, that's just the truth, all right?
Listen.
Let's be honest with ourselves.
Tekken has an amazing convoluted story.
Yeah, Guilty Gear too, but, I mean, mostly you're playing for the combat there. And so it's, like, cinematic to have that kind of like that, those vocals in it, and it fits the type of music. But I don't know, I feel like it'd be weird if I was playing, like, Legend of Zelda and then someone just started, like, singing a little pop song. I don't know, it just feels off.
The reason why I asked this is because I'm very against lyrics. I'm like, I don't want to hear your words. I don't want to have to look this up later. Because half the time, even if it is like nonsense words, I think it's like a different language. I'm like, all right, let me go figure out what this translation was because I'm thinking so deep into it, right? The only time I've ever seen it done well is Final Fantasy 13, where they just redid the same like melody. So I knew the melody, so I could be like, all right, what are the words? Because they just reused like the Sarah's theme repeatedly throughout it. But yeah, so I'm glad to hear other people are wishy-washy on it. What about you out there? For lyrics? Against?
I'd say mostly against, slight lead to against.
All right. Well, hey, it's working. So let me do the proper introductions because it's fun. Okay, so the goal of today is to gain insight and perspective of many different musically inclined professionals and how it helps or hinder role-playing experience. So we're going to meet the panelists. Somehow everyone up here was selected to be a part of this. And like shout out to some of these people because with all the scheduling stuff, with all the MAGFest stuff this year, some people like came in like this week. So yay.
Oh, really?
And together these people have at least a decade of role-playing experience, and when you total them up, it's like over a century. Okay, so, hey.
You're really making me feel old now, man. I don't appreciate that.
Are you sure about that math?
Yes. So, I'm Lodestar. I'm the host, creator, producer, editor, and everything else for the new hit podcast, The Shape of the Star podcast. Podcast isn't a name, just to be like clear. Okay, so I have over a decade in dance experience. I studied dance at George Mason. Yeah. Mason Nation. Actually, all of us went to Mason.
Yep.
I'm a teacher, instructor, and coach for dancers of all ages. It's because guard coaches can't get a consistent title. So I just throw that because resume patter, hey, hey. And I've won multiple awards for choreography, all given to me by the students. So paper plates, not even the dollar store trophies, but they're awards, and thus pad that. Then we got Chris. Chris is a big nerd. He's writing his own sci-fi fantasy book series. He works at a haunted establishment. Swears he does not have a Magic the Gathering addiction. Handcrafted his own Spartan armor from Halo, not like 300. Teaches students. And yeah. So then last down yonder, we got Spudnik. No, sorry, you're coming up.
Yep. I went with that because Nick is my actual name, and he told me to come up with a name, so there you go.
Yeah. So Spudnik is an accomplished bodyguard, loves hockey, needs a haircut,
True.
has a political science degree, which is unused currently,
Yep. And will continue to be so.
is a former drummer, not a cool one because he didn't march, and is just happy to be here.
Yeah, guys, I'm just happy to be here. I almost didn't make it, too. I walked in 5 minutes before we started.
And he genuinely does not care what your star sign is.
Very important to me. I'm sorry.
And then last up, we got Sanjiku, who lived in Broadway, Virginia.
Not that Broadway.
Learned that anthropological knowledge helps throw out a bard's plans in role-playing games.
Very useful.
If you have an annoying bard, just make it super realistic, and it usually stops everything. Loves cat people in Final Fantasy XIV. Also loves history, anthropology, folklore, and typography. Which one is typography?
Topography? Maps.
Okay, I didn't know if it was
Well.
maps or writing, type.
That's typography.
Those are two different words,
Close.
buddy.
Typography.
Topography
cool,
and
but
typography.
Those people are very artsy. I'm not.
And yeah, this is us. So if you ever have questions for specific ones of us, we're up there. So, all right, next question is, do you have a favorite soundtrack?
Final Fantasy 14.
Oh, you and your Final Fantasy 14.
It's all I've been playing for the last 6 months.
Oh, man. I wish I had known I was going to be asked this question prior. You go, because I got to think about it.
I know this is about a role-playing panel, but soundtrack, if I could all put it in collectively into one bubble, Halo is a complete masterpiece and work of art.
I'd consider Halo a
Yeah,
role-playing
Halo's an
game.
RPG, right?
You're playing is
No,
it's not?
it is not an RPG. No,
My
it's
first-
strictly a shooter.
My
a
first
story.
There's a story.
Not
That
a
doesn't mean you
great
can be
one.
a... Okay, continue.
My first minimum wage job was 40 minutes away from my house. So in my god-awful commute all the way out there, I would constantly be listening to Halo because I'm a super nerd, and that's what I decided to listen to in the car. And man, just makes you want to press the gas a little bit harder.
That is fair. Okay, I think as far as role-playing games is concerned, I think the old Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross games have great soundtracks, they're amazing. But then overall, it's really just anything by Inichio Morricone. He did all those spaghetti westerns. I love those so much. Or John Williams is an easy answer too. But the best, that's such a difficult... Okay, I guess I'll go with... I can't believe you're making me do this. You should have told me beforehand, because I'll sit up here for 10 minutes.
While you're
All right,
thinking
well, let's
about
just
that.
go with actually, let's go with the whole Fistful of Dollars trilogy. Let's go with that one. I think that one's my favorite. It's talk about series that would be worse without the music. I mean, oh my goodness. But also knows when to use it sparingly. There are times where there isn't any music and it really adds to the tension. Oh, it's so good. Check it out. Watch those movies.
Mr. Moderator, forgive me. I'm going to ask a question of my own.
Go for it.
What soundtrack would be your favorite to use as a soundtrack in a role-playing game? My answer may surprise you. Final Fantasy XIV.
We're not
covers the
paid
whole
by Final
spectrum.
Fantasy XIV, for the record. But this is not sponsored content.
Praise be to Soken.
Oh, the best in... What did I used to use? Well, I mean, if you're doing like fantasy, like traditional fantasy, like the Lord of the Rings soundtrack is very good, obviously, and an easy
Absolutely.
one to use. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, Halo's also good. Halo has a lot of like different sounding, different styles of music that you can draw from.
One of the first ever soundtracks I ever purchased for myself, back when I was like an early teen, I actually got the World of Warcraft soundtrack, which again, we're talking about a soundtrack that spans an entire world, and Jason Hayes did a fantastic job on the music in that. That could be pretty good for a role play.
I think that's probably one of the most uncontroversial opinions you can have about World of Warcraft right now, is that the soundtrack is actually really good.
Yeah, the soundtrack's good. No one will... Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I've got all the way up through Mists of Pandaria on my phone. So, absolutely. And then another one I always like to tap into, anything from Elder Scrolls. If you ever just need like a good high fantasy, Middle Ages-y soundtrack, Elder Scrolls, it works. It just works.
This wasn't my question, so I feel like I can answer because I have an
Go ahead.
answer. Okay. Who here has ever heard of Ice Fantasy? Okay, good.
You've
No
told
one
me
ever
about
does.
it.
Okay, so Ice Fantasy is this Chinese drama that's on Netflix, and it's basically Lord of the Rings combined with Avatar: The Last Airbender, but with the speed of an Asian drama. Storylines are only 2/3 of an episode, and like entire like season-long arcs are only six to eight episodes. So this 62 episode season, like you go through the ringer. So there's a ton of music. It's wonderful. It's available on Spotify or Apple Plus. What's Apple's thing? Sure. And yeah, I encourage you because it's honestly really fun because it was inspired by Lord of the Rings a lot.
All right.
Going on with this, I usually organize mine based on like I'll have like town themes or like battle music that I'll just put on shuffle or whatever. Battle music, I mentioned it like briefly earlier, but Guilty Gear has amazing music and it's all great for battles. And even if it doesn't fit the fantasy theme, it doesn't matter because it's awesome. So
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. Can you name a time when a song enhanced a scene in a game or something for you?
Do you ever just feel like a one-trick pony? There's some scenes in, surprise, surprise, Final Fantasy XIV, where the song started playing and I started crying before we actually got to the emotional part because I figured out what they were going to do. Absolutely. Music can absolutely just send me into absolute fits of emotion.
Which scene?
well, I don't want to spoil
Spoilers.
anything. Yeah.
Oh, whoops.
Very spoilers. Absolutely not.
Never mind.
How about this one? Here's another one. Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. When Pippin is singing for Boromir and Faramir's father. Absolutely. Just the emotion that they put into that is fantastic.
Returning to my classroom, so there's one simulation, I guess you could call it, where I have my kids reenact a battle of World War I. And so they're doing trench warfare. They're hiding behind their desks, and they're all fighting each other. And so in order to do this, who did that in school? Like where you reenacted? No, is it just me? Okay. So
did not have that
I
much
have
fun
my
in school.
kids fight World War I in my classroom, and in order to kill each other, they're throwing paper and whatever, because middle school. So anyway, they're all fighting. They're having their battle. battle or whatever. They're throwing paper, they're killing each other or whatever. And I put on music from Gears of War just to enhance it. Definitely made paper throwing a lot more intense for a whole bunch of like.
Man, I wish I was in your
12-year-olds.
class. That's dope as hell.
Did you flood the classroom?
Did I flood the classroom?
Like those trenches, isn't that why they were all losing their feet or something?
I don't think he was trying to like injure the children.
You're
Not
supposed to
usually.
replicate, not actually repeat.
I have an answer that's like sort of tangential. When I run role-playing games, I don't like necessarily always play like D&D. Most of the time, it's actually like more indie stuff. But one of them called Space Kings is space themed, and one thing I like to do is do like a little recap because we might not be able to play like every week. If it's been like a month since we played, probably need to remember what happened last time. So almost like it's a podcast, I'll do like a little recap, and I'll play the same theme music that I do for like every recap. So it's like a little theme song, and that kind of like gets everybody like, all right, time to go like back into it, time to play the game. It kind of like sets the mood the right way and everything. So I recommend if you run any campaigns or if you're in a campaign, tell your DM, just pick a song that they really like as like the little theme music to get into it because it's a really good way to start a session.
Oh my god. Okay, next question. All right, cool. So, if you had to create a theme song from scratch for yourself, how would you describe what it would sound like?
I thought you were asking how I would make it. I'd commission somebody.
I have people that could do that if anyone out there needs something, by the way.
It's an interesting question that I don't think I've ever thought of an answer for ever in my life.
What? Wow.
Well, you answer it.
You have thought?
Okay, so. Well, I would get what's his face. The guy that did the orchestration for Be More Chill I thought was really good. I wouldn't want necessarily Joe Iconis to write it, but I do know it's probably going to be an A major. And okay, if you go listen to the jingle of the podcast, like something like that, that's why I know it's an A major. But it's going to be something like 2000s kids music trying to be like rock. Like Nobody's Perfect.
Right.
Ish sound mixed with like Winx Club transformations.
Okay. It's got to be, for me, got to be jazzy, like a Persona 5 type deal. Probably Dorian scale, because that's my favorite. That's like the James Bond scale. That's just, I'm a huge jazz fan, so you get a lot of Dorian and jazz. Definitely some brass and a lot of keyboard. Electric keyboard probably would be what it would be.
I personally have always tended more towards the less bombastic, more, I don't know, think more,
Subtle.
yeah, subtle, like piano, something soft, probably something sad because, I don't know. Music with emotion, it's great.
But I was like, but you're not a sad person.
No, but I like sad music. It makes this cold, dead heart of mine feel things.
All right. This is something that, audience, you are more than welcome to chime in for this one. So, do you think the only time signatures dividable by 3/4 are the only romantic type songs? Okay, so let me explain this. Okay, so in music, like you know how like at the beginning of the music there's like 4/4 time, 3/4 time? People claim that 3/4 time or anything like 12/8, something divisible by it, are the only romantic songs that are possible.
What about a waltz?
That is what a waltz is, 3/4.
I was going to say that might be why they're saying that is
Right.
waltzes,
that makes
dances.
sense.
I'm seeing head nose from
Well,
out
no,
there.
I mean, of course not. I mean, any time signature can be any type of song. I mean, I don't know. Go ahead.
There's this one theme from, I haven't played Eno Gumi, but I've listened to some of the music. There's this one theme that's in 5/4 that uses like, it essentially like an extended 4/4 where they just kind of use the extra time to add more weight to what's kind of going on. So I feel like if you use that as an example of that kind of music, right? Because it's not 3/4, it's not 4/4.
And even if something is written as like, oh, it's 4/4, a lot of songs do change their time signature, but because you can only have one in the beginning. So like the Beatles have like songs with like 7 different time signatures, especially in like the Revolver era. So in fact, I don't even know no, that one is 4/4, but regardless, I think any type of time signature can be any type of music you want it to be.
Well, it's all in tone and emotion, I guess, and situation. Context is almost as important as anything else.
Definitely more to do with what, like, if it's a minor key or, you know, that's more important for that, in my opinion.
Oh, God.
What was it?
I think, I mean, I don't have like a least favorite, but I definitely think the one that people do poorly the most often is 5/4, because they're trying to be clever. Like, you're not Dave Brubeck. You know, it's a little jazz joke for you, for the 7 people in the world who got it. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people, it's kind of cheesy, the 5/4, if you don't do it right. It's like faux Latin, you know what I mean? It's got that kind of like syncopation, but if you don't do it right, I think it's really bad. So it's not my least favorite. If done well, it's really good. But it's definitely the one that people mess up the most often.
Is anybody here familiar with Drum Corps International? Yeah, so DCI, basically international level marching band, for those of you who don't know. And I was watching the live championships one year, and the announcer is announcing funny things about, you know, the next group that's coming on. And apparently one of the songs that they were doing was something along the lines of, it was like 22.5 by 24 was their time signature. I was like, that's even
like?
possible? I have no idea. But apparently somebody was like, I'm cool, I'm just gonna write the most convoluted, like, you know, time possible.
I was
So
going to
that's the
say 8/10 or 10/8. I can't remember which one it is, just because I had a choreograph to it, and it sucked. But 22/24?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's going to suck.
Because you're just trying to be clever, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense to do it.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That's one of those, well, I wrote this.
Yeah.
By the way, another fun fact about time signatures. So, who here has ever heard of Twilight? Okay, so we all know the song 1,000 Years that came from the movies, right? 1,000 Years Part 1 and 1,000 Years Part 2 are in 2 different time signatures. It pisses me off, because you would think, like, oh, I'm just going to go one song into the other. No, it completely changes. It really just does not work as one song. But that's why 1,000 Years Part 2 got more famous for weddings, because it's the one in 3/4.
I didn't know there were 2 parts, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It has more instrumentation in the background, orchestration. And I think the guy sings more. Yeah. It's okay, we have a car ride tomorrow. Guess what?
Oh, no.
Okay, so many of you work with people who may or may not have sensory issues. When you're trying to design like a game and experience to play, what things do you think about to make sure the game is inclusive for those with those needs? I know it's hard.
Yeah, I know.
I don't share these
So-
questions beforehand.
No, he just hits them off the cuff. Yeah, so I work in special education, so a lot of the students that I work with have sensory issues, like if things are very loud, that can really bother them. So yeah, I mean, obviously the number one thing is like to not overwhelm them. Like, it's often better to have sometimes no sound if you can tell that they're getting irritated or agitated, than it is to even just continue to play something relaxing, because it might be relaxing to you, but it wouldn't be to them. So just, I mean, and that's just like a good lesson for knowing your audience. I mean, we talked before about like how music can enhance things, but also sometimes there are people out there who get very distracted by background sounds. My mom has issues with hearing, where if there's sound in the background, she can't focus on the words people say. So everybody has their own little things, so it's always good to know who you're working with.
Absolutely. Just like, even think Like, just from your own personal perspective, I'm sure there's music that you just cannot stand to hear.
The song Second Chance by Shinedown. My least
Fair
favorite
enough.
song.
But just think, sometimes there's things that you can't stand to listen to. Not everyone's going to want to listen to what you want to have on in the background. So just always try to be cognizant. If it looks like someone's maybe not enjoying it as much as you are, maybe it's time for a music change. Next track.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just on a case-by-case basis. Accommodate the needs of the person who, and what they need. But that's not an exciting answer.
No.
No, I mean, yeah, because of course the answer, like always, is like, oh, talk to the people you're with and see what they want. But that's boring, right? That's a boring answer because it's such a cop-out. But it is genuinely the best advice you can give.
And I think if I'm in a role play, I want to be surprised by what I'm entering. I don't want to know what everything's going to sound like before I get there.
Well, there's actually websites that help with this. This is why I asked to see if anyone knew. Also, because those were really good answers. So there are YouTube channels like the Rush Garcia. I know it's like epic like orchestrations of things, but it's done in a way that it makes really subtle background music. And it actually will just do stuff. Okay, so by day, I actually didn't put it up there, but I'm a therapist. So when people are like in sessions with me, they just need to like chill out. It's like, all right, cool. Do you care of a song? They never care what song it is. So I just put on YouTube. Cool, you have to the end of this song to like self-regulate and woo-saw yourself out.
What is it called again?
Rush Garcia is one of them. That's the thing. Once you click on one of them, the algorithm just shoves the rest at you. So I just know Rush Garcia because he has the boom boom at the beginning of every one of his.
All right.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that. That's really cool. Thank you.
No, yeah, I'll link you. I'll link anyone. Also, if you go to his Patreon and commit $1, you could get a free song emailed to you a month to use for things. That's how I found a yoga song. All right. Audience members, we got some time. Do you have any questions for us? All right, we'll start with our 2 hours of sleep person.
Yeah, she needs to go to bed, so let's get it going.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to add music and like D&D, how do you smoothly do that? How do everything be account for it? Or you have to figure out how to
Go ahead.
Okay, so for everyone else in case, the question was, how do you smoothly integrate music when you're actively trying to play like a tabletop game? Like, do you have it like preset up with a shortcut, with a hotkey or something, or what do we do?
You sounded like you were excited about this. Go ahead.
So one thing that I will often do is YouTube is a really good friend of mine when I'm trying to find something, because all you need to do is go into YouTube and type exploration soundtrack, and you'll get like just a litany of different items there, and then that will just play and continue to play and continue to play. And even if it runs out, if you're exploring for a long time in your campaign, it'll probably go to the next one because of what plays next. So there's that. But yeah, you'll probably want to have a number of different tabs open is how I would do it. I don't know if that's the most fancy technological way to do it, but yeah, YouTube is definitely a friend of mine.
I definitely, I mentioned it briefly before, but I have little playlists for different things. So I'll have like a battle music playlist, and I'll just put that on shuffle so that it's not the same thing or the same order. I have like an exploration. I have like a sad music, sort of an emotional music playlist. So I'll like that's like just part of my sort of session planning, is coming up with different things. I use Spotify. You can use whatever you want. But I definitely recommend getting like a playlist together for different scenarios that you'll come across, because then you could just flip it on right away and you're ready to go, rather than like being like, oh, hold on, I need to go on YouTube real quick and find the specific song that I want. It's very useful.
And speaking of transitions, because obviously you'll be doing different things, one thing that I can't stand is when you go from one theme and then you just immediately cut the song off and flip to another one. I think one way that I usually do a nice smooth transition is to lower the sound gradually over 5 or so seconds, and then play the next song, and then pick the song back up so that it feels smooth, it sounds smooth, so it's not a giant abrupt cutoff.
There are, I think even in Spotify you can do that in the app. You can make it so that it fades out and fades in. So
I definitely think, personally for me, a soundboard is the dream, but budget. I've always wanted one to be able to do that, you know, actually good, smooth transitions, actually add in like little audio stings without it being, you know, too jarring, but
Oh, that
If you're
real
looking
quick.
at
I'm
it.
sorry. It just reminds me. Get like a generic tavern sound, because there's always, like
Always
if you're
useful.
playing any type of RPG, there's going to be a tavern. It doesn't matter if it's like a fantasy bar or a space bar. Generic tavern sounds are the best. If you specifically look up like fantasy tavern sound, then it'll be the ones that I use. I think it works for any setting because it's just like muffled, it's like, and then like clinking and stuff. Yeah, exactly.
oh yeah.
My suggestion is your phone is your best friend. Get a speaker like this. Wait, do I have? Okay, this is like a fancier speaker. This was $30 on Amazon. Black web.
Real audiophile over here.
But let me tell you, this thing blasts out a room. Okay. No, the original one I had was a black web. It was like a little square. It could blast across the football field. I needed it for guard. That's how I found out. $25 at Walmart.
Actually, I do think that the cheaper ones, like the smaller ones like that, are better than just using like a big speaker set, because oftentimes the bass will, if you're trying to play low volume on like a big system, the bass will overwhelm the higher notes. So a little one like that can be a little tinny too, kind of helps to add to the atmosphere.
But yeah, if you hook it up to this, you have your phone with you. Phones, we all know how to hit a button real fast. And like, if you want to just, if you're not like them, I know I'm like a sound editor, but my phone's still my friend. Just like manually put the volume up and down to make my transitions a lot easier for me than presetting everything up. These speakers are your friend, and that black web one was designed for camping, so like I literally roll it across the field to kids. I'm like, oh, you need this? Whoa. Doesn't matter. This thing's waterproof. Like, get durable ones. All right, and you also had a question.
It's actually similar to that one. I was just going to ask, like, basically that, but I guess what I can ask now is, we went into this a little bit earlier, but if you had to list, like, a couple games where, one, if you had to list a couple games where the soundtrack you could really, like, exploit and use in, like, a tabletop RPG, what would you say? I'll start with that. I don't know.
Legend of Dragoon. It's an old game. People don't remember it, and the music was great.
That's a great choice.
Dark's
Yeah.
theme is the best.
Also, the if you need like more relaxing music, the Breath of the Wild soundtrack, just its like sort of faint piano is great for just like a very like low key situation in your game.
And just because it's so big and so expansive, Skyrim's got so much. I mean, again, I use YouTube a lot. You go up and you just look up a Skyrim exploration playlist. It's 2 hours long, and that's just the exploration music.
And that's just Skyrim. There's the other, like Morrowind has some great music too. Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a specific game or a series, because if you're talking about an entire series, then that brings you to even more.
Also, we didn't mention it before, but Mass Effect has a very wide-ranging and good soundtrack.
didn't
Definitely
think about
recommend
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say if I had to choose like my top 5,
First one would be Final Fantasy 14.
you got it. Final Fantasy 14, anything Elder Scrolls, The Witcher, really good soundtracks. I had another one. Dragon Age has some pretty good music. Any of them.
Yes.
Okay, top 6. Depending on what kind of like theme you're going for, not everything is going to be, you know, nice, plonky loots and everything like that. Sometimes you're going to have a different style that you're going for. Something like Stardew Valley or even Pokemon. It all depends on like what style you're going for. I always think of fantasy first because that's what I like to play. But, you know, if you want something more modern, bring in more modern instruments.
And if you're not doing fantasy, all of the Mega Man games have the best music ever. They're so good. I mean, you're not going to have a lot of like emotional ones in the Mega Man soundtrack, but it's really good for just like higher, more intense moments. If you're doing like a space theme or anything that's like even like a little bit more than fantasy, really good.
If you need something like technologically advanced, like Blade Runner 2049, fantastic soundtrack. Tron
Oh, yeah,
Legacy's soundtrack
Those
is
like really
far better than
synth-heavy
the
ones,
movie.
yeah, it's really good.
Movie,
Just put Daft Punk
soundtrack.
on the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just-
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are great. I didn't even think about that. That's really good.
Yeah, movie-wise, the thing mainly to go with is you can't go with something too famous, because then everyone's gonna know it.
Yeah.
So I try to pick more, not niche, games I know not many people, not crazy amount of people play, but I did like some of the lesser famous Final Fantasy. I did like Xenoblade and stuff like that. And like that ends up working out pretty well. But I'm also running low because now I'm like, I've exhausted that whole list already. So now-
The Tales series has good music, and it's not one that people will instantly recognize. I love those games. I think if you played me a Tales song right now, I wouldn't be able to tell you it was from a Tales game. It's not like the greatest music ever, which is probably why it doesn't stick, but it's really good background music.
I would also recommend the Fire Emblem music. I know people like have a play Fire Emblem, but you're thinking too hard in the game to pay attention.
Yeah.
Also, there's a guy. His name is Phil or Philip, depending on how long ago it was. Lober, Lober. He does a lot of like. He doesn't have that many. His catalog isn't as expansive out in the world because he mostly actually does like trailer music for movies. But his own music, it's great. It's out there. You could Google it on YouTube. Phil Lober. He's also on my podcast eventually. I don't think his episode's out yet, but he did the trailer music for the Avengers.
Oh shit.
And he did like Aquaman's like real music. Like, big
You
things.
just reminded me. Mad Max, guys. Mad Max Fury Road. That's the best up-tempo music you can find for like a battle right there.
And it's very thematic. You have to have the right setting for it. The Okami soundtrack is one of the best game soundtracks I have ever listened to in my life. Fantastic.
It
They've
definitely
got
would be
sound
weird
effects
if you
that
don't have the
match.
right setting for it, though.
Yes.
Also, Kingdom Hearts has a ton of music
True.
that if you don't pick a Disney song, you could probably slip it in.
Again, no one sing or hum anything. We are going on YouTube. You had a second question, though, right? Okay, then, yeah.
So before my question is on this topic, I will always be the biggest proponent and the biggest fan as well of Darren Korb.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fire is probably my favorite soundtrack of all time, and it's peaceful, it makes you die.
Darren Korb is awesome. Absolutely. He even has some like good like Western stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fire and Hades are really good. I think they're both fantastical occasions. My question is, just out of your experience with like either video games or with philosophical play, what are some things in your music that make you or that you experience that take you out of like your setting or like your immersion in the world or the game? Like what are some things that you notice that like you either lead us to avoid or things that like just really like disrupted like the play in the game or the environment?
Advertisements.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you do use Spotify, unfortunately, you're going to want to pay for it. Definitely advertisements, anything like that that comes up.
That's why I typically tend to create a playlist on my phone. And of course, you know, I role play in my classroom. I don't know what those ads are going to say, so it's not always appropriate.
Oh my gosh.
Avoid the Rocky theme. Okay, just everyone knows what it is, and instantly it will. I mean, they'll all laugh. You could play it for a second. Actually, do that. That'd be funny. But that'll take you right out of it for sure. Anything that's like super famous like that. That's also cheesy. Pretty much any '80s soundtrack.
You could,
Yeah.
you could make it like a very like comedy character theme. But
Sure.
You probably shouldn't use it in your main play. Something that I thought of, we kind of mentioned it when we were doing that campaign together. If you have a loop that's too short,
Yes.
you will notice within half an hour. And it
That will
is
drive you
awful.
insane.
Like, we had that loop, I am not kidding. Every 5 minutes, all of us stopped and went, ugh. Now, why I didn't turn it off, I don't know. I couldn't find anything else that really fit. It was the closest. But if it has like just little things like that, you'll start to notice and it will start to bother you. It's very
Also,
unfortunate.
if you are using YouTube, one of the risks that you're going to run across is that different YouTube videos will have different sound quality. And if you're like listening to this like really nice, like lush orchestral thing, and then all of a sudden you get like a 128 kbps, like horrible, like instantly everyone will recognize it and they'll notice that transition even if it's as smooth as possible because it just sounds so different. Yeah.
I would say simpler is better because of all these things. Like that disgusting bloop sound, I swear. But the simpler is you're not really focusing on the music. Music's there to enhance what you're actually playing. So simpler helps people have it in their heads subconsciously, but they can focus on what they're supposed to be doing.
That's true. You don't want the music to be the main character of your campaign. As much as I know, like, if you're running the campaign, you have so much fun picking out the music and everything, but just remember that, like, the players are still playing, and you want to focus on them and your own fun, but you don't want to, like, spend so much time with the music that you end up forgetting the other things you're supposed to be doing.
And real fast, in the same vein before we move on, it sounds super simple. Make sure it's not too loud when you get started with it. Like, it's easy to change when you're like in the middle of it, but
that's another risk with YouTube.
You know, the THX.
With Spotify, there's a setting where you can, and I swear I'm not sponsored by Spotify. There's a setting where you can make it so that they're all the same volume. Use that if you have it, because on YouTube the things will be drastically different volumes most likely.
All right, you also had a question.
Yeah, it's kind of piggybacking off of all of the music that you would find on YouTube and everything like that. As someone who has transitioned because of the pandemic to streaming is offline, so you get to do it 20 or whatever. And then also kind of doing uploading sessions either YouTube or streaming to Twitch, you might have issues with some copyright claims with playing types of music. Is there either suggestions to work around that or other reasons that you can?
Okay, so we've had this panel for 3 years now, and it's different every time, and that's why we love doing it. Our friend Cole Burkhart answered that question very well in a previous year, and it's all on the MAGFest YouTube because
Well,
it was
I do know-
bunch of websites.
Yeah, and I do know that YouTube also has its own music that is copyright free that you can use. You can also just look up copyright free. So, I mean, you're going to obviously limit your options because if you're uploading it to YouTube, you can't play the Final Fantasy soundtrack.
Unfortunately.
But unfortunately, Final Fantasy 14 won't make it there. But yeah, YouTube has like literally like thousands of hours of free music that you can look up, and it's usually if you go to like the YouTube creator part of the website, it'll be there. And also, if you just look up like royalty free fantasy music, again, it's not going to be as good as like something that the Lord of the Rings soundtrack, sure. But it'll be good enough to get by, especially since you're going to be like probably presenting the music to your friends as you're playing online anyway. So the sound quality is not going to be the best regardless. So you don't have to worry too much about that.
And depending on your means and the budget of your game and the players and everything, you might even be able. There's a lot of really talented people out there who would probably be more than happy to make something along the themes of the campaign, but it depends on how much you're willing to spend. I know you're probably not going to get the best quality off of this website. I've seen some awesome things, some terrible things, but places like Fiverr or Patreon, and again, always get a sample of the work. But
that reminds me. Also, like look up some like real local or indie artists and just email them. They're not going to sue you. They're not represented by Disney. Like, just email them and be like, hey, we're going to use your music for this campaign. It's going to go on YouTube. Is that cool? 99 times out of 100, they're going to say yes.
If you need a custom thing commissioned, I got a guy for you, though. It's not me, I swear. All right, we had another hand in the way yonder. Yes.
So from a perspective, so say you're conditioning for great accuracy to a scene with lots of dialogue. Do you prefer to possibly do music in, or would you rather lower
volume of the track you're already playing?
What was the question?
So I would argue that your music should always be low enough to where if people need to just have like long conversations, it doesn't distract them anyway. So if you find that you have to lower the music after like a battle scene, it was probably too loud. Because, you know, your players are going to be talking to each other. Theoretically, that's a big part of it. So I would definitely have just, yeah, if you find yourself having to lower the volume, then it's already too loud. Keep it at a lower volume.
I'm also a big fan of, you could just turn it off during the talking time. Less is more. If we're going to fill it up with our own selves anyway, we're not listening to the music.
I would say, depending on what type of music you're using, if you're on, you know, the YouTube exploration, you know, 5-hour mega compilation, maybe it's not as easy. But if you're using a video game soundtrack, see if they have a song with the same themes and try to find one that's lighter, more delicate, more subtle, and use that at a low volume. And it'll kind of keep that continuity going without overwhelming what's actually happening.
For sure.
I think that would be what I would prefer.
One thing I forgot to mention earlier I wanted to say is that if you're using music for like your whole campaign, those moments where you turn it off are going to be intense. Like if there's like a character death or something, cut off the music. Like let the players live in that moment, you know? As we were saying, like as we were talking about before, like music enhances things, but if you're using music a lot, then those moments where it's gone, they're going to notice that. It's going to feel incredibly tense, and I definitely recommend doing that if you get the chance.
That's a really good point.
All right, any other questions? No? All right, so this is the schedule of the weekend. This is our last panel, everyone. So thanks for coming and being a part of it.
Thank you so much.
If you want to reach out to us, we have a ton of links. Actually, it's all mostly me. Just realized, sorry, world.
Yeah, thanks.
But yeah.
It's all entirely you, bud.
Yeah, whoops. It depends who's up here. Like, you got to, like...
It's okay. I don't have an online presence, so...
You have a Patreon?
It's a fake Patreon I made as a joke for my friends. So if you want to give me money, yes, you can. I won't give you anything for it.
You could.
I haven't been on the Patreon in months. Huh? My friend gave me $2, so he might still be giving me $2 a month. I don't know. He might have forgotten about it. Yeah, Nick's daily life advice videos. I will not make them. So, I mean, look, if you actually gave me money and I got like a notification, I'll do something for you, sure. But don't.
All right. So yeah, Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Ooh, I'm young and trendy with the kids. Reframe, we're on Facebook mostly. We have a website too, reframecons.wordpress.com. Cons, like, you know, conventions, cons. Anyways, The Shape of the Star podcast, which has its own Twitter and Instagram, and a Gmail. Ooh.
Which he still has not invited me on.
It's all good. So, yeah. Thank you so much, and have a great MAGFest, everyone.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you, guys. You're the best.